So you'll hear candidates say that I support the Constitution, then you'll hear them say, I support term limits. Those things are opposed. You gotta pick one. The Constitution is very clear. There's other things that happen that are unconstitutional that we all think are pretty important. Like the First Amendment, people trying to say, hey, you can't use your First Amendment rights. We all stand up and say, no, that's protected. Same thing, this is a constitutional issue. There was an opportunity to have legal term limits through a charter. The charter was on the ballot. You all got to vote on it. 76% of the people in Douglas County that voted said they did not want legal term limits. That's just how the voters voted.
When the judge said that he voted down the term limits because of the constitutional issue, he also said that elections create term limits. So this is your opportunity to have term limits, and so that you can be the ruler of your fate. Thank you.
I just have a couple of things to say about that. Clearly, this is an unsettled issue in Douglas County. I have been around talking to people, and this comes up routinely. I personally believe that nothing should supersede the will of the people. And so I would think that we need to do some work in that issue.
I believe Commissioner Susan Morgan was the commissioner who challenged the term limit rule and took it to court, but she was supported by Commissioners Boyce and Commissioners Freeman, who want to continue to, despite what the voters say, 70% of the voters voting for term limits, they wanted to continue to be commissioners beyond their 2-term limit, which was most of the voters voted on. So it was their support. So for them to kind of stand back and say it had nothing to do with me, they were the ones who pushed it. They're the ones who made sure, and Susan Morgan was the sacrificial commissioner, is no longer with us.
So when the term limit initiative passed on the same ballot that I was elected on the first time in November 2014, it was challenged by Susan Morgan and a group of her supporters in the community, which was not Commissioner Freeman and I. And when that issue came to court, or was headed to court, it was Commissioner Freeman and I who actually had to vote to allocate the money to the clerk's office to defend that lawsuit against Susan Morgan and company on behalf of the voters, which we did. So for him to say that we somehow supported Susan Morgan and made that whole thing go away is just absolutely not true.
And Marcus, would you like to address that question?
I don't have much to say on this one. I think it's a pretty interesting topic. I don't know about you. I love sitting here and I love watching everybody move when this, everyone kind of gets all twitchy, because I'm young enough, I didn't get to vote on this one. I happened to miss that vote. But from the story that I heard was, and I'm trying to put this together, and maybe somebody could clarify it someday, but if the voters, when it was originally put on the ballot, I have heard something like 70 to 75% of the Douglas County voters wanted term limits. Got shot down, ruled unconstitutional. And then when it was brought back, 76%, I believe, was what I just heard, said no. So I just, my question would be, what changed? If 70% of voters approved it the first time, why did all of a sudden 76 disapprove it the next time? And like I said, I didn't get to vote on that, so I find it kind of, I'd love to know more about that, actually. I think that is an interesting kind of situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll consider that to have been a question everyone had and Tom started with. So our next question, we'll start with Brandy, and it's combining a couple here. One is, are environmental issues important to you? And if so, what will your first priority be to combat climate change in Douglas County if you are elected or re-elected? And a related question is, what can be done about the worsening drought in our county, or what would you do to address drought?
I definitely want to address drought and water shortages. I have a card for that. 97% of the world's water is salt water, Only 3% is freshwater, 2.5% is not accessible, it's too far underground or it's in glaciers, and that leaves only 0.5 of the world's fresh water available for immediate access. In the Middle East, they have to pay for very expensive desalination plants, so we are actually incredibly lucky in the United States to have as much fresh water as we do. It makes me think about how World War III will probably be fought over water and over water rights, and I think that we are very lucky to be situated so closely to Crater Lake, which is in Klamath County, but it is the deepest freshwater lake in the United States, and it's the deepest volcanic lake in the whole world. So I definitely think that protecting our water is super important, and I've lived in rural areas and experienced the summer low flows and when you have to truck in water. Thank you.
So great question. I serve as the president of the Association of ONC Counties, and our sole focus in that group, that's a group of county commissioners, is the 1937 ONC Act. The 1937 ONC Act was the first conservation act passed by Congress. They say that again. It was the first conservation act passed by Congress. It's the first time in any federal legislation that the term sustained yield is mentioned. Prior to the 1937 ONC Act, entire watersheds were logged and left. The sustained yield management style says no more will be harvested in any given year than what grows. We have a model on these ONC lands of sustainability, and we can manage for drought, we can manage for species, we can manage for recreation, we can manage for any value we think is important on that land. And there is a great history on those lands of conservation along with production, and we need to get back to doing that. We recently won a federal lawsuit that will require the BLM to manage under the principles of sustained yield.
I am so much for water impoundments and getting I looked into it. I think that the places that we could go, should revisit that Milltown Hill Dam up there in Drain. I've talked to the people up in the Drain area, and they have a lot of water problems. Back when Mike Winters was a commissioner, he was spearheading this, and I talked to him about it, and I think that it's something that needs to be revisited. And another place where we could look at water impoundment would be the headwaters of Deer Creek. Deer Creek is the first creek that will flood when flooding happens, and then it gets very low in the summertime. The South Umpqua River in the summertime, it almost gets to where you've just got algae. And by having Deer Creek with water impoundment, it would feed fresh water into the South Umpqua, which would bring it back alive and would help the fisheries. And I think that as far as climate change, there's not a whole lot we can do about climate change, but we as individuals can watch what we do. Thank you.
Well, this is a really amazing country because of the amount of rainfall. And so, in my opinion, we need to look at creative ways, water catchment ideas, educate our people that are in ag to know how to do catchment systems and spread that water further. So much of it just runs off. And certainly, I like the ideas that Belen just mentioned. And I think the industrial impact is another area. I think also people need to be conscious of the illegal marijuana grows that are taking place and the exorbitant amount of water that those are actually confiscating from the overall water that we have. And education of the public. I think people really need to know what the situation is and how each person can do their part or conserve in ways that are amazing when each of us participates.
Oregon literally issued billions of dollars of infrastructure money to water conservation projects at the end of last year. Douglas County got like none because we didn't have anybody working on it, so we didn't have the projects identified. We have 10 wolves in Douglas County, and we have a wolf advisory group. Surely we can have a water conservation advisory group that can collect all these great ideas we've been just hearing here and put them together into a package, make it into a project, so when the money becomes available, we can hand it to the legislators and they give us the money to do the projects. We got tons of good people that got good ideas on what we should do with it. We got nobody doing anything with it because we're all supposed to be looking at the commissioners and they're not doing anything about it.
So I am concerned about the environment and global warming, and as the county and the liaison commissioner to building facilities, we're constantly looking for energy saving opportunities, including transitioning to LED lights and looking for solar panel opportunities and so on. We also did recently resubmit the Milltown Hill project to the federal agencies who are looking for what they called shovel-ready impound projects, and we believe that that one's fairly close to shovel-ready for consideration. But I think the future really is a combination between new water impoundments, solar electricity, and hydropower, because the issue is solar energy is created during the daytime when energy use is low, energy use is high in the nighttime when solar energy doesn't produce. So the solution is to use solar energy to pump water uphill and let it run downhill in the evening times and generate power when the power is needed.
When it comes to global warming, I think everybody has their own opinion. I think we can all agree leaving our resources out there to burn up and emit all that carbon into the atmosphere is probably one of the worst things we can do. As far as when it comes to water and drought conditions, something that I, as working in the timber industry, have noticed, and something my family has noticed, talking to older generation, people that have grown up here, we have more trees today than we had, 100 years ago. How much water do trees use? Trees use a lot of water. They use a lot. They drink, as we go into the dry season, that late rainfall we get that would traditionally run into the creeks and the rivers to bring the water level up, those trees are taking it and they're holding it. They drop leaves and pine needles on the ground. In the wintertime, when they don't need as much, we get heavy rainfall, there's a duff layer on the bottom, we get flooding because that water is now just running straight back into the creeks instead of going into the soil. This is a multi-step problem, and it's a tough one to address, but we gotta look at our environment and the way we treat our environment, and we're not taking care of it right now. Thank you.
So in Douglas County, believe it or not, we work on the environment every day. At the solid waste department, we're bringing back recycling where we can. We're using glass as recycling and instead of aggregate in the landfill for filtration systems. We're now recycling cardboard again. And to someone talked about the water. I've been working with Berkeley and Wyden's office to change the rules on impoundments because we're running under a 1944 set of rules on how we impound water at like Galesville. Can't ever fill the thing up in today's world. It doesn't rain the way it used to do. So we've got to do something different there, and I'm working with that, and I'm making some headway. Also, we have carbon emission trees dead in the forest all over the place. We have to get the federal government to put more pressure, which we're doing, to try to get some of those down and replanted with green trees that are producing oxygen. And that's one of our ways of fighting the climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And the next question, the question is, the Centers for Disease Control states that 390 Douglas County residents have died from COVID-19. Do you agree that this is an accurate statistic? And we'll start with Tim.
So Douglas County's goal in running the pandemic from the Public Health Authority standpoint was to give timely, accurate, local information you could trust, local recommendations, and ask you to do the right thing. The numbers we report through the county are verified by our public health officer, who works for public health and works for the commissioners, and our medical examiner, who works for the sheriff's department, along with the state medical examiner. To the best of our knowledge, those numbers are as accurate as possible, and I do believe in the numbers.
Thank you. And that would go to Lynn next, yes.
Yeah, this is a really touchy subject for a lot of people, and when someone dies in the county, the reason for their death, sometimes maybe it was directly COVID, maybe it was comorbidities or other things involved, but COVID has been serious on our community and on our families. And a lot of us had COVID, and I'm one of them, and survived it. We are in a position now that I need to move on and get in a position where we don't create more problems for the elderly. We need to be able to protect their health and be more forward-thinking, because that is the group that passed the most, was the elderly. So they need our protection. And we need to know that each and every one of us are important, and any death is a tragedy.
All lives matter. COVID is a serious topic. And I believe it hit everybody pretty hard, pretty fast, and caught a lot of people off of their feet, not really knowing what to think, and trusting from the very highest levels of our government that we were getting accurate and correct information. I have read a lot about it, and there are a lot of conflicting views on this, and there is conflicting data on this. But unfortunately, I don't believe that some of our mainstream news sources are allowing the full complement of data that's out there to be shared.
I am fully vaccinated. You're not going to hear any of our incumbent county commissioners say that. As leaders, that should have been the very first thing they said, to encourage people to get vaccination. Whether or not you believe it or not, they should have been the leaders. They didn't do anything. We have 390 deaths in Douglas County for COVID. We've had 8 deaths in March, and we have had 3 deaths since April. Douglas County is the fourth highest per capita death rate in Oregon for COVID. We're the second highest since the vaccine has been available. We could have done things so much differently to not encourage businesses to ignore the mandates. We could have been the example, stood up and said, hey, I've been vaccinated. Encourage other people to get vaccinated. You can do that. You know, if you don't want to get it, that's fine, but our leaders should be telling us that. They shouldn't be out there saying, hey, ignore the governor's mandate, and if you do that, you get fined, I'll help you pay for it. They shouldn't be doing that. That's not what a leader of Douglas County does, but that's what our commissioner did.
Yes, I believe the number's accurate.
You know, if the CDC is saying that, I'm assuming they're getting the numbers, the county's reporting it to the state, which is reporting to the CDC, so the numbers coming directly from Douglas County, we had, I believe, 390 deaths we got for kind of venturing a little bit on this, but, you know, any death is a shame. We don't want to see anybody leave their family, you know, and friends early or in unfortunate situations. The best we can do is create the opportunity and give the public the resources to take care of yourselves, make an informed choice, and, you know, do what you believe is best for you. I don't think the county commissioners, if you don't believe in getting vaccinated, that's my belief, I shouldn't have to do it. You know, I've heard candidates say, the commissioners, they should have got vaccinated, and then turned around and said, you know, you get the choice. Well, you know, if I'm a leader and I'm going to represent you, I'm going to represent by doing what you know, America was founded on. I'm going to exercise my right to choose, and I'm going to let you do the same.
So I also believe the numbers are accurate.
A short answer. Okay, so the real question in this question to me is about the lack of trust in government. And I think that it's a pretty deserved lack of trust. Do I believe that the numbers are accurate? I'm not sure. They may be overreported, they may be underreported. I think it's a hard thing to track. I think it is hard to suss out whether something is a COVID death, or it is a comorbidity death, or it is a death that we would have had due to our regular flu season, because it's very hard now to tell what our regular illness is. So to me, the big part of this question is restoring people's faith in their government, in their local government, and then letting that trickle up into the state and the federal levels. I think that we need to bring integrity back to government so that we can make informed decisions. And again, the thing that I have heard from people is that they don't know why Dr. Dannenhofer, who is not an elected representative, was the one passing down the edicts. That's what I've heard.
Okay, thank you. The next question has to do with the use of any COVID relief funds that will come to the county. So if you are elected and part of the commission, how would you go about deciding how to spend any COVID relief funds that come to the county?
Well, there are experts on the matter, and if we get the funds in, I think that we should allow the experts to choose how that money should be spent, and not, I'm not a medical expert, so I would not be able to say you have to spend it on so many masks, or you need to spend it on so many vaccinations. Our money should be chosen by the experts to go where it is needed.
We were talking federal dollars.
Yeah,
All right.
we will have federal and state money coming, and how should that money be spent?
Okay, I believe in medical freedom, and I believe that we should have freedom in public health as well. I don't appreciate some of the things that occurred, and I believe that state and federal dollars come with some pretty big strings, like ropes attached sometimes, that actually tell us what we can and cannot do. I think we need to examine these things very carefully. If money were to come down, I would want to look really, really in detail about what it is that we would be bound to do and what would be put upon our citizens to have to do.
If money is available for Douglas County for COVID relief, we should get all we can. It's taxpayers' money. We've already paid that into our system. We're just getting our own money back. For us not to take it would be crazy, because we're just giving our money to somebody else. So we should use that money, and it's going to be outlined on whatever money we get. They're going to have strict guidelines on what we can spend it on. Deciding what that is today is pretty hard to say. What I want to do, what it says in the guidelines, absolutely. Whatever it took to get the money to bring in here is going to upgrade our systems, whether it's schools, whether it's our medical facilities, it's going to upgrade them. We need to get as much money as we can in COVID relief and all that stuff. And I suspect we've already got a whole bunch of that's already come in, and that's why that's the big pots of money that the commissioners are talking about that they're finding out.
So I agree with some of the things that have already been said. We do have experts. Your three current county commissioners are experts. We've been receiving COVID funds from the state and the federal government. The monies that come in are allocated towards specific things. So there's economic relief for businesses, and there's money for infrastructure related projects and medical supplies and all these other things. And we have received some, and we have spent it according to the rules, and we encourage anyone who's interested in audit to do so, and we'll continue to do that.
You know, I'd have to say, unless you're working with only COVID relief money or whatever, you know, this money is usually allocated. The federal government is already in place. This money needs to go to, you know, business, a certain amount to businesses, a certain amount here, a certain amount there. You know, me personally, I think you have to look at it and go, does Douglas County even need the money? I mean, this reckless spending is what's gotten, at the federal government, that's what's gotten our $20 trillion in debt in the first place. It's probably more than that now, because we have reckless spending. I hear the sentiment, well, it's taxpayer money, we need to go get it anyways. That's why we are in debt, because of that mentality. You know, if Douglas County needs the money and we need the help, we can take it and put it to use. If we don't really need the money, I think maybe morally, I mean, why should I take the money anyways? If we don't need it, send it back. Give it back, give it back to the federal government, give it back to the American taxpayer.
So the COVID relief money, that we've gotten and we will get in the future, clearly has sideboards, as Commissioner Boyce talked about, and there were certain categories that you can and can't spend it with, and finding that and navigating that. There were several different categories that worked out. Some of it, it has to do with helping cities, and some of it has to do with unincorporated cities like Clyde or municipalities. The strings attached are simply accounting and making sure that it's used within the sideboards that they presented. The money is coming, and it's either going to go to us or it's going to go to another county. How we use it though is, we have to strictly do within whatever sideboards that they give us.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't say this before, but I also believe in the right of people to direct their own health care. I definitely don't think that we should be accepting COVID money that has strings about mandates, about that some kind of quota, if you don't use it, you lose it. But I'm also skeptical about the use of these funds because of the current administration's tendency to misuse funds that are supposed to be like Title III for certain uses, and then using them wherever they feel, or putting them in, injecting them into the budget wherever they see fit. So again, yeah, I don't think that we need to accept money with strings attached either, especially if it infringes upon our right to choose.
So we have a tremendous finance department at the county, and our current budget proposes to spend $202 million. And that money is watched like a hawk, and each and every year we're audited, and every year the current commissioners have been in the county doing the work. We've won the highest financial achievement award from a national organization on the way we take care of the money. COVID dollars, first and foremost, are for public health and responding to the COVID pandemic. As much as we all believe the pandemic's over, there's still COVID pandemic work going on, and that's the first priority for this money. DPHN, which is normally about 6 employees, is contracted to do this program element of public health for the county. They've been as high as 40 employees doing that work. They still have more employees than they normally do, and we're still funding all that work that they're doing. And we're going to continue to fund that and make sure we don't, like other counties do, let all that staff go and then have a resurgence and not be able to deal with it. So first priority is public health with pandemic money, is to take care of the pandemic.